can be done elsewhere. But now, of course, and I take it we are going to talk about that too, we have, in a way, become a developing country again.
No, but before we go to that...
Because we overreached.
Yeah, but before we get there, it seems to me that the strength of Iceland is partly, of course, in the geothermal reserves that you have, which is unique to Iceland, partly in the fishery reserves that you have, which is not unique to Iceland, because there are many countries in the world which have perhaps even richer resources than you, where fish are concerned. But the greatest strength that you have is that you have a very small population size. You know, only 300,000 people, that is 10 blocks of New York, Manhattan, that's all that you are. And so handling a problem of limited population is relatively simple. Unfortunately, there are other countries in the world which have huge populations, and I think of China, India, Pakistan, Iran, Algeria, Egypt, etc., where the problems have a totally different magnitude. But let me come back to the population, therefore, and forgive me, but I have a fascination with sex. I want to know, how many children do you produce per couple? Do you have any idea what is your growth rate? Is each couple in Iceland producing 2 children or less than 2 children?
Well, with growing prosperity after the Second World War, we had a kind of a population explosion. We went from around 200,000 to 320 in a span of 50 years or so. But then, with growing prosperity, we experienced the same as so many other Western countries, that the reproduction began to drop off. Now the average family has about 1.5 child, I would think. 1.5, 1.75, so certainly less than 2 children per family.
Well, if you ever want to rectify that, you can import people from Pakistan. We'll be happy to contribute to your growth rate and population.
And I'm sure we will be very happy to receive them also. This has, of course, posed a problem for us also.
Yes, aging.
Because, aging. We have an aging population, and fortunately, we have had a fairly liberal regime as regards immigration so far. We have had people from other European countries mainly join our workforce. I don't know if we have had all that many visitors from your part of the world, including Pakistan. And I suspect one reason for that is that people coming from that part of the world would not find our climate very hospitable. As you said, I came from India, where it was typical, say, in the month of June, that the temperature will go up to 110, 120 degrees Fahrenheit. If you're used to that, you're not going to have a good time in Iceland, I can tell you.
Okay, you said at one stage earlier that Iceland was a very poor country. It's difficult to imagine Iceland as a poor country, because in recent memory, Iceland, as you yourself said, been the richest country per capita. It has always been on the top of the charts. How did you suddenly, in a limited span of time, turn from a poor country into a rich country? And then, of course, we will ask how a rich country becomes a poor country again. But first, poor to rich, how did you do it?
It has been a lesson in humility, I can tell you. You know, we have been knocked off our self-professed pedestal. Now, just a few points I want to share with you. It all started, I suppose, this rapid growth that we have observed started with the privatization and the deregulation of our banks about 10 years ago, and we witnessed phenomenal growth within our banking system over a period of only 10 years. And one reason for that was that credit was so cheap and easy to come by in the international markets. On the day that the three largest commercial banks we have in Iceland went belly up, we all of a sudden discovered that their liabilities totaled 10 to 12 times our GDP in the course of 1 year. And it all happened in a week. The three largest commercial banks went down. And like you say in this country, they were simply too big to fail. The government had to step in, not so much to nationalize them as to take them into administration. That's what we have done. And of course, if you do that, you inherit all the liabilities and commitments that have been entered into by these banks. This is how it happened. Well, we all know, of course, what the situation is around the world. We are not a case apart here either. We were feeling the ripple effects of the global economic and financial crisis last year. But then when hell broke loose and the credit lines dried up for the international banking system, they collapsed, and they did so very quickly. Now, you can ask, could we have done something to prevent this? Yes, of course, we could. We should have tried to restrain this growth of the banking system. We could have increased our foreign reserves. We could have joined the European Union. We could have done various things, but by hindsight, we probably should have done them. But the fact is, we didn't. And I suppose what has happened represents a failure of sorts, a failure of the government, the central bank, and the financial supervisory authority to step in and stop this. It was happening under our noses, and we didn't know. But it's as Warren Buffett put it when he answered a question like this not so long ago. He said, "It is only when the tide goes out that you find out who is swimming naked." We didn't know. It was happening under our noses, but we didn't know. We only found out when the tide went out.
Yes, but after all, the per capita income in Iceland jumped up over those 10 years. In other words, the entire population was a participant in that explosion. It wasn't a question of just three banks trying to make money. Everybody was, to quote the President of the United States, indulging in greed. And so you can't say that it was without your knowledge. After all, if you were getting money and you were getting richer and richer, surely you should have stopped to ask, where is the money coming from? But you didn't. And so you cannot put all the blame on the banks and not on yourself. Would you agree with that?
Oh yes, that's why I said there was a failure on the part of the government also, and the central bank and the supervisory authorities. They should have stepped in. But it was not simply a failure of those particular institutions. Nobody really seems to understand or be able to explain what really happened. I think it was Pudd'nhead Wilson who said, "To know nothing is better than knowing what ain't so." You know, all the economists seem to have had their heads full of what ain't so. They were explaining to us, that everything was fine, hunky-dory, and then when the walls came down, they couldn't explain it. And nobody has really figured it out, what really happened and why it happened. I suppose at some point in time we will find out.